just seeing what women in the industry are really doing. I think I've found the most enjoyable part of it, seeing what some of those women are actually achieving. Some women have been fundamental in, creating change in the industry, driving, new policies in their workplace, really making it a better place for women to actually work in the industry, but also celebrating some of those that are technically fantastic, some that have been, created these incredible designs on projects.
Welcome to Series 2 of ConstructHER podcast, a Master Builders South Australian initiative which celebrates women in the building and construction industry. My name is Holly Gardner. I'm Chair of the Women in Building High Vis Committee, and I'm looking forward to introducing you to a wonderful array of women who are doing fantastic things in the building and construction industry.
The female-led business registrar is going to open up opportunities to attract more women in the industry.
There's other support and mentoring opportunities for them.
I just have something different to bring to the table.
When I have been on site with mothers or elderly women, they felt more comfortable knowing that I was there.
It will connect lots of different women involved in all aspects of building.
Welcome to Season 2 ConstructHER podcast, celebrating women in construction industry in South Australia. Thank you for being here. We have Amanda Brady. She is the SA Chapter President of NAWIC. She is also a lawyer at Cowell Clarke Lawyers, Associate Director, specialising in litigation and dispute resolution. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And can you please tell us a bit about yourself, how you came to the construction industry and what you're doing now?
Yes. So I started out, as you mentioned, as a lawyer in just the general dispute resolution area, coming up to 15 years ago now. When I first started at a previous firm, I got heavily involved in one of the biggest cases actually happening in the state at the time.
In construction? In construction. Can you tell us a bit about that without breaching any confidentiality?
Absolutely. So that was a really large dispute centred on the construction and refurbishment of a power station. So there was
in South Australia?
In South Australia, Port Augusta. So there was a lot involved at that time. There was a lot of claims relating to delays, design, all of that sort of thing. And so I became heavily involved, started to meet with experts, learn a lot about the engineering side of things, the delay side of things, all of the things that really came together in a construction project. That was new to me. I found it fascinating and sort of developed an interest more in the construction space back then. That then led me into a bit of an introduction to NAWIC itself. And so at that point, I got to know and become involved with it, started to meet people in the network and really learn a bit more about the construction industry itself.
Understand. So just explain to the viewers what actually NAWIC means.
Yeah. So NAWIC is the National Association of Women in Construction. It's a national body. It's a not-for-profit organisation run in each of the states by volunteers and by a national board of volunteers as well. We do have a paid staff at the moment, which is a new thing. But basically NAWIC's responsible for advocating for women in the construction industry, creating those networks, celebrating women and what they're achieving in that space as well.
And I'm assuming it's women in all different, in variety of roles.
In all facets of construction.
From trades to professions, etc.
Correct. It's largely been more the white-collar side of things until recent years. And now we're developing a bit more of a focus in the trades, blue-collar space as well. But all sorts of roles from that trade space, to the professional side of things, the accounting, obviously the lawyers, everyone, the estimators, the project managers, everyone that's working in that industry or associated with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned about this special project in Port Augusta. Have you got another sort of highlight that you could talk about, to the viewers?
Yeah, I think my highlights probably come more so from the NAWIC side of things and just seeing what women in the industry are really doing. I think I've found the most enjoyable part of it, seeing what some of those women are actually achieving. Some women have been fundamental in, creating change in the industry, driving, new policies in their workplace, really making it a better place for women to actually work in the industry, but also celebrating some of those that are technically fantastic, some that have been, created these incredible designs on projects and are really getting recognised for what they've done. And that's something I think is really important.
So when you're talking about design, are you talking about architects in construction?
Yes.
You're talking about engineers in construction?
All of them.
All of them?
Yes. And so seeing them grow, seeing more women come into the industry has been a real highlight as well. I think over the past decade or so, there has been a real shift. The numbers are still pretty low, as I'm sure you know, but that's on the improve. It's increasing. There are more women are recognising that there are actual opportunities for them. And I think that's probably been a highlight for me so far.
Fantastic. So when you talk about the change sort of coming into being in the last 10 years, are you talking about that previous to that there were some obstacles that were obviously a problem and like those obstacles are slowly being removed?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you expand on that?
I think some of those, for me, I think personally, but also that I get as feedback sort of on behalf of the people involved with NAWIC, is back then probably the lack of support or allyship. I think it was really, for me personally, I'd experienced being the only female in a meeting with clients on a construction matter. And I'd meet with women who were then the only female who were working on a particular project themselves. So they faced those challenges themselves in being effectively a minority in that space, but also then not having the backing of other people that they were working with. And I think that's something that was a huge challenge. I think it still probably is, but it's improved out of sight. We see so many more, mentors and allies, male and female, but particularly male, who are doing a really fantastic job of being an ally for some of those women, helping guide them through their careers. And so I think that's a real shift that I've seen.
Fantastic. And and obviously having people who are designated mentors to specifically help women.
That's right.
That's been a massive change, I think, with that.
Huge.
Yeah.
I think that's continuing to improve.
Fantastic. So what other benefits or highlights can you sort of explain to our viewers, apart from what you've already told us, that you see as something positive, the industry in general terms?
Yep. I think there has been a real policy shift within workplaces themselves.
You mentioned policies. Are you talking about women introducing those policies, or the fact that policies have been made that support women? Or
both. So I think there's been huge achievements in women who have been driving those change, but also huge achievements by some of those workplaces themselves in actually implementing new policies, making it a better place or a better industry for women to work in and stay in.
Do you think there's a pattern that where it started off? I mean, we had I've interviewed another woman, a celebrated female in the industry, talked about tier ones, obviously encouraging women based on contractual obligations.
Mm-hmm. I think the tier ones, that was certainly going to be something I was going to say too, have done a really good job in that space.
So they're leading the way.
I think that they are, yeah. And there are a number that we've come across that are doing really, really good things in South Australia and across the country at that level. And it is starting to filter down. I think we can see that some of the tier two, some of the smaller organisations are really trying to implement policy change to create better working conditions, whether that's flexibility or just making it a better place, whether site conditions for women to work in, but also to return to if they take maternity leave, for example. And that works for both men and women too. I'm seeing some of those policies being implemented across the board, and flexibility, for example, is a big one. If men have flexibility, it benefits all of us as well. So that's certainly a big change that we've seen and noticed too. So
fantastic. So I was going to talk about change. What would you consider, that is important for change apart from policies? It sounds to me like educating people, not necessarily the tier ones, but the subcontractors, and trying to get the message out there that women can be, great contributors in the industry, and this is how that should occur.
Yep.
Our thoughts from our high vis committee at Master Builders, we are introducing males onto our committee because we believe it's a collaborative effort. It's not just women fighting for women, it's women working collaboratively with our male counterparts to get fantastic outcomes for women in the industry. And it's a question of how we spread our footprint with that male help and how we educate particularly the subcontractors, not the tier ones, the ones that perhaps don't have the funding or are limited with resourcing, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think it's something that this is not just a female or women problem to solve. I think women understand the challenges that they face themselves. And so male allies are really important. I think that we need to work on that education piece. I think there's two aspects to the education piece. I think there's the educating the people that are already in the industry as to what they can actually do better. But I think separate to that, there's an education piece for those that are not yet in the industry about what it actually involves, how great it can be, and how much we actually need more people in the industry as well.
Yes, well, we've got in South Australia, obviously, we're desperate for more workers, both from interstate and from overseas together locally to help with the current contracts that we have to facilitate in the next few years.
That's right. We've got the biggest pipeline of work coming into South Australia.
So it's a perfect opportunity for women to partake.
100%. We're 50% of the population and hugely underrepresented in this industry. And I think that can be partly due to a lack of understanding about what the industry actually is and what it involves. I think, and I'll admit, I would have thought this when I was younger too, that I would see construction as being trades. I might have a bit of tunnel vision about it, but it's not. And I think it's about educating people about what opportunities there actually are, how many different professions there are within the industry, and how they can actually contribute to it. I think it's about getting that message out to not only people who are already working in another industry perhaps, but also schools, and educating the younger generations about the construction industry.
Yes, well, Master Builders, as you're probably aware, have our Born to Build program that we have our field officers going.
Fantastic,
to talking to kids at school about potential job opportunities, but particularly apprenticeships and training programs.
That's right.
Within Master Builders to enable them to obviously become educated and then obviously contribute as workers in the industry. So we are Master Builders is very much pushing for young students in schools, female students as well as male students, to be educated in this industry. But it's we've got to also encourage the parents to understand that women can contribute in the construction industry in a variety of roles.
Yeah.
And we're obviously not discriminatory. The roles can be trades, they can be professional, everything. And and I think we've got quite a way to go with women in the trades. I think that women have probably progressed quicker through the professional roles rather than the trades roles. And I think we've got to be practical as well with how women contribute in the trade roles. I definitely believe that there's opportunity for women in trade without any doubt.
Yes.
But we have to be practical as well in thinking that.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
I think that's right. And I think that's about, setting achievable goals as well. I don't think any of our organisations expect that we're all of a sudden going to become 50-50 in something like the trade space. But we're at about 3% of women in the trade space at the moment. So it's really low, and there are constraints to it that are understandable. I understand that. But that's right. I think it's about educating the parents, educating young people about what is actually on offer, what they are able to do. And when they do express an interest in it and want to get involved, it's also about keeping them there. And not, there's huge dropout rates, but encouraging them to stay, making those conditions possible for them to stay.
Yeah, and that comes down to good mentoring and support, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, I know that NAWIC has mentoring programs, like Master Builders has mentoring programs.
That's right.
Specifically aimed to assist with women's issues in the construction industry.
Yeah.
Because it is definitely, it's challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
That's right.
So, I mean, I understand working mainly with men in the industry, and I'm finding even myself that women are definitely accepted. They've got a place in the industry, they've got a voice in the industry, they can assist in the industry. And there's a lot of support out there with our male counterparts. I do believe the support from our male counterparts is definitely the majority now, not the minority. And I think women have come a long way, but it's out on the building sites. where I think it's probably the toughest. I think it's easier for women working in an office in the building industry.
I agree.
But out on the sites is where probably the most challenges are, like with women's amenities. And I think that's where policies are important, you know.
Absolutely. That's a huge one, the amenities side of things, which is, you know, you'd think it's a pretty menial issue, but it's something that understandably deters women from working in that space. I think that's also getting better as well. And I think over the past year in particular, a lot of attention's been drawn to things like that, where until a company or a project has actually had a woman on site, they might not have needed to think about things like that. But I see as these numbers are increasing, there is a need to actually shift focus to basic needs like that, really. And so that is slowly starting to be addressed. And so I think women can start to find a little bit more comfort that they will be catered for, and that the environment will be okay for them to work in. But that's progressing. I think it's getting better.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Do you think there are any specific training programs that would be sort of valuable to women?
I think introducing and focusing on some of those practical side of things in the actual qualification process. So as people are learning their trades, as they're doing their apprenticeships, as they're at TAFE, or uni, whatever it is that they're doing, I think more focus on the practical realities and who you're working with and sort of how you treat each other and those sorts of things before you actually get into the workspace, the workforce. And so I think you might learn, depending on who you're working for, you might learn a lot of that once you're on the job, but you might not come into it with any background sort of in that area. And so I think that's a big one, is actually teaching people while they're learning the trade itself or the occupation itself to actually understand the bigger picture about everyone that's going to be on site. And that's not just a women issue, that's everyone, all sorts of diversity as well, because I think that's going to be better for everyone if everyone has that understanding.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good answer. I was just going to say, sort of as a final question, what would you say to a young woman, perhaps at school or in their teens, late teens, just finished school, wanting to enter into the building industry? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would encourage them to do it. I think that while they're there, while they're still at school, learn a little bit more about what's involved in the construction industry, what is on offer. Because as I was saying before, there are so many professions, there are so many options for women and for everybody in construction. Get a bit of an understanding about what you might like to do, seek out some work experience, speak to some people, join some networks, whether it's High-Vis, NAWIC, a lot of the different ones that are around, and get to know some people in the industry. Seek out possibly a mentor, but try it out. Give it a go, see what you're interested in, because I think you'll find something that really does suit you.
Fantastic. I don't think I can add anything more to that. It's brilliant. Thank you, Amanda, so much for coming in today. I really appreciate you being here with some fantastic insights in the industry.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to make a comment, please make a comment right here on Spotify. Alternatively, if you require further information, please go to our website. The details are below.